So we'll discuss tonight the topic. It's a very broad topic, and of course we're not going to have time to deal with the whole topic. This will be one of many shiurim on this topic. We'll just hopefully to get us started, and after Pesach we'll continue on it. So the question, when science and Torah collide, when we find Gemara saying one thing and medical science seems to conflict with that, what gives? Is the Torah and science in harmony? Is there unity? Do we leave it as a dispute? Which one wins, etc.? So we'll begin the topic. It's a famous Gemara in Shabbos. I believe it's 75a, but don't hold me to it. The Gemara talks about killing lice. So we know the Gemara tells us in Shabbos, we learn out the Lamed Tes Malachas. There are 39 prohibited activities on Shabbos, and one of them is Netilas Neshama. One is Shchita. You can't kill an animal. A Shochei Behema, you violate one of the Malachas. And not only can you kill an animal, you can't kill a human either. You can't kill a human during the week either. But on Shabbos as well, there's a separate issue of we don't do capital punishment and other things on Shabbos. So there's halacha, it's also to take a life. Yet the Gemara says in Shabbos, it's mutter to kill a kina on Shabbos. It's mutter to kill lice on Shabbos. So why is it that you're allowed to kill lice? Although you can't kill animals. There are lice animals. So the Gemara says that the Rambam goes into greater length on it. The reason why you're allowed to kill lice on Shabbos is because the only type of animals which are prohibited are those that come from a mommy, come from an egg, that are created. But lice, everyone knows the ABC of science, of spontaneous generation as it's known, that lice come from dirt and sweat, or, I'm sure that's the official scientific term, sweat, dirt. But I'll read you the Wikipedia definition in a minute, if you want to get technical with me. But the Rambam writes, everyone knows the ABC of science. Everyone knows it's spontaneous generation. And that's why, even though normally it's a biblical violation to kill an animal, killing lice is permitted on Shabbos because it's spontaneous generation, and therefore it's not similar. That's the Gemara. The Gemara is clear, permitted to kill lice on Shabbos based on spontaneous generation. The Rambam makes it clear, that's what the Gemara seems to say it, and the Rambam even says it more. The problem is, or potential problem, I'll read you from the Wikipedia. Spontaneous generation is an obsolete theory regarding the origin of life from an inanimate matter, I'm skipping some stuff, which held that this process was commonplace, an everyday occurrence. In contrast to being a reproduction from a parent, spontaneous generation, these animals, these lice came out of nowhere. The theory was synthesized by Aristotle, who compiled and expanded the work of prior natural philosophers, etc. And then it is generally accepted to have been ultimately disproven in the 19th century by the experiments of Louis Pasteur, expanding upon the experiments of other scientists which began in the 17th century. The disproof of ongoing spontaneous generation is no longer controversial, now that the life cycles of various life forms have been well documented. And therefore it's clear, just like the Rambam writes, everyone who knows anything about science knows they were spontaneous generated. Now modern day scientists, and not modern, 17th, 19th century, and it's clear today, it's accepted, there's no such thing as spontaneous generation. So the problem is, how do we deal with this Gemara? Or if you're a brisker, how do you deal with the Rambam? How do you deal with the Rambam and the Gemara that clearly states spontaneous generation? And now and if we assume there isn't, does that mean that does the halacha change and I'm not allowed to kill lice anymore? It's a big nafkamina for mothers or parents we'll have kids. I did get that there is a shiloh in general of killing lice, so that's one of the things is this Gemara is helpful. They still have to be careful about not pulling out too much hair and other things, but killing it alive, so everyone wants to go with spontaneous generation when the kids have lice and they want to check their lice on Shabbos. On a serious note, we seem to have a classical conflict. The Gemara, the Rambam's clear. You kill lice on Shabbos, spontaneous generated. And today there is no spontaneous generation. In fact, Rav Schechter always liked saying over when he was in YU. He was taking one of the science for non-majors, maybe chemistry, and his teacher was Rav Shmuel Soloveitchik. I think it was Rav Soloveitchik's brother. So when this whole thing came out, so he was like, so he says what happened originally. So what happened was when people were going crazy, how would they answer up the Rambam? And then what happened was the communists who don't believe in God. So, I don't really get this exactly, but the way he says it over, I'm sure they still don't believe in God, even though there is but they basically say, what do you mean spontaneous generation? Where did the first animal come from? We're atheists. We have to make sure we believe in spontaneous generation because we don't want, people asking where did the original one come from. So, money can buy anything. They paid off some scientists. They wrote up a report disproving there is spontaneous generation. So when this report came out, some of the Rabbanim were dancing in joy. We have an answer for the Rambam now. Rambam was right. So Shmuel said it's ridiculous. Number one is the communists don't believe in God. Like that, you bring Uriah from then, and the whole thing was a joke anyway. Everyone knows that it was this. For enough money, you can find any scientist, or you'll find, doctors in any profession. For enough money, you'll find people to write up, it's like in any court case, you find a lawyer, you find someone, they'll find a doctor to show how their medical part is right. So again, so that helps. So we're back to the kasha. So what do we do? So during that time, I think the 17th century. That's when different encyclopedias came out. One was from the Pachad Yitzhak, not Rav Hutner, Rav Alfont. I forget his name. I'm sure it's in the article in the tradition. But it's the Pachad Yitzhak, Rav Yitzhak I forget his last name, but not Rav Hutner. And he writes, and he basically says that even though we know spontaneous generation doesn't exist, but we'll see. Many of the poskim still say the halacha still remains. So the question is, number one is, so how do you deal with this halacha then? Or if the halacha the halacha seems to be based on erroneous scientific information. So is that true? If the halacha is based on science and we find it to be wrong, the halacha stays, or the shtana, the shtana hadin. So we'll see. So in this case, most assume, I think the Pachad Yitzchak writes, and some Achronim do write, that now you can't. There are those who believe who write you can't kill lice today because we know they're not spontaneous generated. But many still say the halacha still applies. So what pshat the halacha still applies? Does that mean to say, because we don't care what the science has to say? Or, no, not that we don't care about what the science has to say, we're just going to come up with another reason, another way to explain the Gemara. So we'll see a couple of ways. So one approach is from, and then similarly we have the same thing, the Gemara has, on a similar thing, we have with the whole fish thing. The fish and the worms, and also Wikipedia has a whole discussion on that, but actually I wasn't going to quote from Wikipedia. On the OU website, what? Rav Chaim Goldberg. What? Okay. So, I'm quoting from Rav Chaim Goldberg from the OU Kosher Org. I know it's true that it might not be reliable in many areas. It's not because I'm only quoting them because I have them printed in front of me, but in this case I know what they're saying is reliable. Else you're right. So other Rabbanim, including Rav Yisrael Belsky, with whom I feel strongly that the parasites currently affecting various species of freshwater and saltwater fish are not different than those during the time of Chazal, and etc. And therefore the Rabbanim permitted the parasites. Also point out, to basically, I don't have to go into the details, basically it's the same issue with the fish and worms in the fish, and they also learned that it was assumed, so people learned that Gemara kind of like spontaneous generation, and therefore now that we see they're not, so what about the fish and the worm? So it's a question whether that's the same issue or not. But getting back, so how do we answer the issue with the light? If it's true, so some explain Rav Shlomo Zalman, which is with Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, the Aruch HaShulchan, that in fact I'll tell you what they say. That seems similar something to like Rav Dessler says, but what they point out is that no, the Gemara. So obviously you're right. Like the Shlomo Zalman says, if spontaneous generation is wrong, so if the halacha is based on some spontaneous generation, then the halacha changes. So fundamentally, if the science is wrong, then the halacha will change. Why doesn't it change here? Then Rav Shlomo Zalman's molded halacha is your life. So why are you allowed to kill lice then? So Rav Shlomo Zalman and the Aruch HaShulchan, they say, but could be the Pashta says no. The Gemara is not saying spontaneous generation. The Gemara realized, that obviously there is no spontaneous generation. The animals come from an egg, from a mother. They come from all these different sources. They don't come from out of nowhere. They come from a mother and egg. And what the Gemara is telling me is, we all know there's halacha that in addition to not eating, in addition to the halacha of eating kosher and not eating non-kosher, there's a separate prohibition of eating bugs. And it's a big chiddush that you have an issa to eat bugs, because it's not something which is rai la'achila. It's not something people. It's not it's not normal way of. It's not a normal way. So usually you eat something which isn't normal. It's not usually an issa deraisa. But you can't eat bugs. So as people say right now, as I'm talking, I could be swallowing 50 bugs, microscopic bugs. How could it be? So that's what the Aruch HaShulchan writes. That is right by bugs. That the Torah only ushered bugs that were visible. If they're not visible to the naked eye, I don't have to be concerned. Let's say like a Rav Moshe has a tshuva by nida. Let's say the only way I can see this spot is red is by using a microscope. Then she's not a nida. In other words, I'm not mechuyev to use some instrument. So I think someone once came to Rav Shachter and they showed him a pair of tefillin. And he said, are these tefillin square? Tefillin have to be square. So Rav Shachter looked, they look square to me. And this guy was a dentist. And he says, no, I work with fillings all the time, I know, and I can see, my eyes tell me they're not square. So so he says, you don't have to worry about it, they are square. Your eyes are like a like an instrument, you're so accustomed to dealing with it, but the average normal person, it looks square, and you don't have to worry about it. So, and again, it doesn't mean, okay, I'll close my eyes, the bugs are invisible, and I'll eat them. No, that's not invisible, meaning, but if you can't see the bugs, so they're microscopic, so the Torah never ushered them. It's a separate discussion today, what's considered seeing the bugs. If I see a black, that's a separate issue, I'm not going into that, but whatever it means not being visible, so it's mutter. So that's what they say, that's the pshat. It's not the pshat. The eggs were so small and they weren't visible. It's not that they thought they came out of spontaneous generation. Is because they were so small. What the Chazal are telling us, that's not considered. Practically speaking, it's considered like spontaneous generations in the fact that we assume al pi halacha we don't consider them like, if you ask me a physical question, they came from little eggs. But since they're so tiny and small, halacha doesn't recognize that, and we view it like spontaneous generation, but not that they actually thought that these people, and therefore it's not a kasha. So therefore, it's not that Chazal thought it's because it's, but what Chazal are telling us, that the reason why killing lice is mutter is because since you can't see the egg, we view it, but not that it's the fact that there isn't, but if it was based on spontaneous generation, then Echanami, a Horeg Kina would be chayav. But it's not. It reminds me a little bit. It's not. There's a Rav Dessler. I saw someone quote. The question was this question we're dealing with now. How does the halachas deal with this when the Gemara goes against when medical science goes against the Gemara? So there's different approaches. We'll get to some tonight. So Rav Dessler had an interesting approach that I didn't see Rav Dessler. I saw it quoted in this article that basically that basically Chazal came up with the halacha. The halacha is true, and then what our job is to take the current science of the day, the current medical science, and figure out why the halacha is that way. So I'll give you an example. There's a halacha, the Gemara in Chulin, I think it's 53a, I believe. It talks about a drusa, different types of treifa, an animal that's going to die within the year. So one of it is an animal is attacked by a wildcat, I believe. So the Gemara, and that seems to be stricter than if you're attacked by other animals. If you're attacked by a wildcat or a certain animal like a wildcat, you're considered a drusa and you're going to die within the year. The child is why? What's so special about a wildcat? So the Gemara seems to say, based on the science, then the halacha says this animal's a treifa. So they're trying to figure out what the science. Why is that true? So the science at that time, you know why? Because it must be the wildcat secretes some type of venom, and therefore they're giving poison, and the person and the animal dies quicker. That was what they made up. That's what science thought. They took the science at that time. They went to the scientists, explained to me why if the wildcat, it was a reality. When the wildcat did this, these animals died. So they went to the scientists, or the rabbis themselves were scientists, whoever it was, and they said it must be because of. So now Rav Dessler says, "Bisman that we know that's not true. It's a joke. There is no venom. So therefore, what we have to do is." We got to speak to the doctors our times and cover what was the pshat of the Gemara. So they came up with it. No, it must be. You know why? Because the wildcat, when they claw, they go deeper, and therefore the dirt goes deeper into the skin, into the body, and the dirt causes an infection, and therefore they must die from that. In other words, the way Rav Dessler was saying, at least, whether it works out, is he wants to preserve the halacha. At the same time, it encourages seeking the advice of medical science. In other words, we're not what Rav Dessler was saying, we're not predicating the halacha based on medical science. This is an observation. Wildcats, animals which are attacked by a drusa, they're going to die early. We thought because of venom, okay, you tell me that's wrong, I believe you. And now science will try to go to science. At least this way encourages that we're looking for medical. So I don't know if it's the same thing here, but it's because there we're looking for different ways. Here, Rav Shlomo Zalman, I guess if you want to assume that they thought it was because of this way, you want to say, well, they went with the science at the time, because then you're saying that Chazal never thought of some will say that through divine inspiration they knew, because the question is how did they know it if. So again, that gets into maybe they had a Masorah on it. That gets into another discussion, hopefully we'll have today, but probably not, about the science data in terms of what sometimes we'll see. It's like we'll have to go through different halachas. Sometimes we see if we reject the science, the halacha changes. Other times we see the halacha is changing, not changing. So But that's the way Rav Dessler writes there. And then perhaps you could say, if you want to say it's similar, maybe you'd say the pshat here. That maybe if you want to say that they thought spontaneous, okay, that's wrong. Okay, but I know how Horeg Teen I know is mutter. Okay, so my reason was wrong, but the halacha stays. You see that. So that's how Rav Shlomo. I'm not saying Rav Shlomo Zalman's working with Rav Dessler, but you could, if you take Rav Shlomo Zalman, the Aruch HaShulchan, you can learn it into. I'm not sure if Rav Shlomo Zalman's saying that himself, but you could say that. You could work Rav Shlomo Zalman's approach into Rav Dessler's approach. That either you could have two approaches and say, well, Chazal never thought spontaneous generation, or you could say no, they only knew the science at the time, and therefore they originally thought that, but now we see it's not, but that we will come up with a different reason to explain the halacha. So that's one approach. That's from Rav Shlomo Zalman, and perhaps it's Rav Dessler. Another approach, an interesting approach, is from the Dor Rabbi, the fourth generation. I think it was the great-grandson of the Chasam Sofer. I think he was the first one to be named after Rav Moshe. His name is Rav Moshe Glasner, I believe. And he was independent thinker, open-minded, all of that. That he came from a Hasidic family. I think he went. Then he went to be. He became, he became like a, I wouldn't say a Zionist, but he became, very pro-Eretz Yisrael. Others among the Hasidim didn't like him because I think he moved to Eretz Yisrael. Not big, different with Zionistic issues, but that's not our issue tonight. So either way, so he writes. He has a lot of interesting stuff in his Sfarim. So one in his Hakdama to his Sefer and Chulin, he basically really has a condominium of Torah Shabbat. Like the Minchas Chinuch really isn't explaining the Sefer Chinuch. He's basically his own definition of the oral law. So he writes like this. He says, how do we explain this? So he takes a totally different mahalach. He goes into the pasuk says in Parashat Shoftim that you go to the Beis Din HaGadol, you have any questions, and you follow them yamin or small. You follow them right or left. So, and this Rashi quotes the famous Sifri that even if they tell you right is left and left is right, Kal v'chomer, if they tell you right is right and left is left, you listen. But even if they tell you left is right and right is left, you have to listen to them. So in fact, it's mashma, if from this Sifri, that even if they're wrong, you follow the rabbis, right? So if that's the case, then if we just take that, so the rabbis are wrong about spontaneous generation, but we're going to follow them anyway, because Yuminus, right? You hear what but either way, in fact, Rav Shechter always likes saying over Herman Wouk, who wrote the book, The Cain Mutiny. I never read it, but I think the book is Cain, maybe it was the name of the ship. Mutiny is what happened on the ship. And basically his book's about that a captain of the ship went crazy. He was giving this crazy stuff, but the point of the book was the captain's in control, the pilot, and whatever the pilot tells you is right. In other words, you have to listen to him even if he's wrong. And he said, where did he get the idea from? From this Rashi the Rashi in Parashat Shoftim. So one of the boys in yeshiva raised it and said, well, that's not the pshat. So you obviously didn't read the Ramban on Rashi. So why isn't this the pshat? Because that's not true. So the Ramban is the first one to point this out against the Sifri. It's not true. Law isn't binding in error. We don't have to look too far to the first Mishnah in Harios. The Mishnah talks about it. The Mishnah in Harios says, it talks about Par Helam Dover Shel Tzibur. Now we all know, if a person that says Machal Shabbos, so something which is Chayiv Karis B'Mezid, if you do it B'Shogeg, you bring a Karban Chatos. So let's say the Beis Din HaGadol paskin that this thing is mutter on Shabbos. And 51% of the Jewish people in Eretz Yisrael did it. And then later on they found out they made a mistake. So that's it. Well, they made a mistake. No. So therefore, they say they make an announcement. They put out papers in the Jewish press and the Canadian Jewish news. We made a mistake. You can't do this anymore. You can't turn lights on anymore. Whatever they said. So, and then afterwards, they have to bring a carbon. They bring a parhalim. they have to bring a carbon. So we see that if they make a mistake, that's it, you change it. And in fact, that's the halacha the Mishnah says. Let's say you're a Torah scholar, and you know that based on Agadol made a mistake. I don't mean a Zakamari, you go out of. Let's say you know that they made a mistake. So it's also for you to follow them. Because if you know they made a mistake, if it's wrong, you don't listen to it. So we see from the Mishnah Harios, basically, that if they tell you right is left and left is right, you don't listen to them. So we have an apparent contradiction. Which one is it? We have an apparent contradiction that on one hand we say that the Gemara, the Sifri says, Yamino small yamin. We say right is left and left is right. We listen to them, mashma even if they're wrong. And Mishnah Hari's says no. So what gets in the Ramban is the first one to mention it. I think it's based on the Yerushalmi. He just says no. All it means is it's nira. Really, the Mishnah Harios is right. We don't have a power of the Pope where whatever he says he can change it. Whatever he says is right. If we make it, if rabbis make a mistake, that's it. You don't follow a mistake. But you have to know they made a mistake. You have to be a Talmud Chacham. You have to know. It's not that if I think they made a mistake, so then if I don't know, not all opinions are equal. It's not talk radio where everyone calls in their opinion and everyone's equal. Like anything, you have to earn a privilege to have of course you can have an opinion, but whether anyone cares what your opinion is in terms of if you don't have if you don't know anything about the topic, it's not going to mean much. So therefore what they say is, of course the halacha is if based in they made a mistake, you don't listen to them. It means if you think that they're telling you right, don't worry about it. They know better than you. You listen to them. If you're a Torah scholar, you know that's the simple way of answering. But the Dor HaRavi has a very interesting way of trying. He ties an hour discussion into this to try to answer up the stira. So he says like this. He says, let's say the Chachamim paskin the halacha based on the science. Let's say killing lice on Shabbos, whatever the case may be, right? So the question is like this, he says, let's assume they base killing lice is okay based on spontaneous generation. So he says like this, the question is, so if what the science they used was erroneous even during their time, if everyone knew that there was no such thing as spontaneous generation during the time of the Gemara. I think all the scientists said it's ridiculous, and they passed it based on something which was ridiculous during their time, and then that's it. That's the Mishnah Harios. It's a mistake, and you throw it out. You throw out the halacha. You can't kill kedem on Shabbos. However, if they base the halacha in science based on everyone. The scientists don't believe in. The scientists believed in spontaneous generation. It wasn't until the 19th century that Louis Pasteur finally conclusively disproved it. So when they based the halacha of Ahorei Tina, they were basing on the science at the time, which was correct. Then he claims, that's a sifri. I feel like you've been small. What's the logic behind that? What's the logic behind? Rav Shechter doesn't like it. He says a mistake's a mistake. Like, what's the difference? Why they made, he claims for Shlomo Zalman says, no, it doesn't make a difference. If the science is wrong now, in theory, you throw it out, unless you come up with some other reason. So Rav Glasser says, no. To me, it sounds like the Chazon Ish. It sounds like he's working similar to the Chazon Ish. That, why should that be that if this because the Gemara, even the science at that time thought it was true. If now it's not true, what's the difference? So it could be, there's a Chazon Ish and there's a couple of Chazon Ish, Chasam Sofer, that what the role of silence, when the Gemara came up with medical things, what was it based on? Was it based on observation, like speaking to scientists? Or was it based on tradition? Was it based on a halacha Moshe Sinai? Was it based on some type of Kabbalah? So some Achronim write that why is it now? That it seems that science is constantly changing, and God basically called that science basically is also it's part of the Torah. It's a revelation from God, and God apparently reveals different things at different times. So therefore, they want to claim that during this time period, there's a Chazon Ish. I'll go into more detail on that. But the Gemara tells us there's 6,000 years. The first 2,000 years are years of Tohu Vavohu. From 2,000 to 4,000 are years of Torah, and 4,000 to 6,000 are the Demos HaMashiach. So, what do you mean? So right now we're not learning Torah. We're not in the 2 to 4. So the different explanations given. What does that mean? The Torah Tamima has one, and maybe I'm wrong. We can argue on Tanem. We'll see. We'll get into that. But the Chazon Ish says that no, it means during that time period between 2,000 and 4,000, that was the definition. He talks about by Treifa, and everyone seems to agree by Treifa. He points out the many animals that the Gemara called the Treifa, and yet today they live more than 12 months. So the Chazon Ish admits to that reality. He acknowledges it's true, but he says kind of like Yamin, small Yamin. He doesn't put about using the door of E. Is Chazal defined treifa during the years 2,000 to 4,000. So in terms of the halacha, that was the halachic reality. In fact, the Chazon Ish writes, I saw the Chazon Ish quoted, that I thought it was very interesting. The Torah was written, the halacha is for eternal. If I had it in front of me, I like quoting it. It was a nice quote, but I'll just tell you outside that basically animals. He explains why is that true? Because animals were forced to live in different conditions later on, and therefore they adapted to their scenarios, and there were evolutionary changes that happened to animals because of the forced conditions they were put into. So he acknowledges a different reality in the animals, but halacha goes with the natural reality, the way it was, and therefore that was so when Chazal made those halachas, that's what it was based on. So that's not the treifa. So it's true that it's not a treifa today. The truth is interesting. True with the Rashba, he said someone who claims that, he says if they can tell me there's an animal that lived that the Gemara calls a treifa, and it's either they're lying or a nace happened. In other words, he's saying it's not, but the Chazon, and the Chazon isn't saying that. He agrees. The observation, he acknowledges the obvious observation, but he says so. That's the halacha because it's like we found, let's say, b'shavachal v'kumecha kriya shema. Okay, so therefore we have 3 hours to kings. I know many people sleep in like much later. So why don't we change the man kriya shema? The teretz is along those lines that the definition of that was said during these years of many halachas. Again, we have to see which one between the year 2000. That was koveya the halachas. That's what the Chazon Ish writes by treifa, and that's what it's not the same exact. That's what the Dor Rabbi seems to be saying. He's saying he's having a little twist. He wants to make a distinction between whether so he's saying if Chazal were right during the science of the times, I guess he's assuming, but he's saying if Chazal were wrong during the science of the time, then it's not koveya. So it's a little different than the Chazal. I'm saying it's not exactly the Chazal. The Chazal is saying basically they're not wrong. It's different because it's a different reality. So either way, that's what he wants to say. So the Dor Rabbi writes that Yamino Smo is that's if they were so since spontaneous generation was accepted at that time, so the halacha still remains even though it's Yamino Smo. But if it was based on false, erroneous knowledge, then we throw it out. That's the Mishnah in Harios. So So that's the approach of, that's the approach of the Dor Rabbi in terms of, he wants to say it depends, others want to claim it doesn't make a difference. Like, I don't care, if it's wrong now, it's wrong now. And that's why, and we find many, let's say, Gemaras, let's say, there's a Gemara in Shabbos, V'achitzen et hakatan ben l'fnei halacha, that before you do and after you do a bris milah, you used to, it's in the Mishnah, Gemara, 19th parak of Shabbos, you have to wash the child, and if not, you're in suffix, if not, you're causing the child to be in suffix sakana. Okay, and that's what you did. So the Beis Yosef writes already in the 1500s that today, I don't know how different the sanitary times were between the Beis Yosef and the Gemara, but certainly between now and the Beis Yosef, it's worlds apart. But he writes, even during his time, we see it's no longer true. We don't have to wash the kids anymore. We have septic, and we have much more antiseptics now. And he says you can no longer machal Shabbos anymore. He says since it's clear, we see that it's not true anymore. The child doesn't need the hot water. So therefore, so the Beis Yosef, it's clearly, he seems to be the science of, again, he's clearly saying in that halacha anyway, we have to talk individually because we're going to get different messages from different Gemara, but if we focus on this Gemara, the Beis Yosef is clearly saying that was based on the science at the time. It's not a tradition. That was considered, and now that it's no longer danger, you got to take a stand because there can't be machal Shabbos on it. And so others disagree. Other achronim, halach l'mais, I'm not sure if anyone does it. But halach l'mais, I don't think it's an issue because we don't do a period, which is even a bigger. I don't even think we do it even during the week, which is even a bigger kasha. Because other achronim write, they claim that any time if the Gemara says it's a sakana, medical science says it's not, or the reverse, we always go l'chumra and we do it. So I don't see it happening here because we're not even doing it during the week, and certainly so much how they would fit it. That's what I'm saying. So any klal has to be qualified because the problem is not everyone talks about all the cases they have, and therefore you just have to try to fit them in. It's not like they have one thing and they tell you what they think. I'm just trying to work it through, working through the different cases. So let's say or mitzitza. So that was the case also in the Gemara. So the Gemara says, if a moa doesn't do mitzitza, you throw him out of there, you fire him. Why, since when? Every little mistake you fire someone? Well, it's funny, I was speaking to a friend of mine actually, who, he runs a Pesach hotel, and he just, I was speaking to him today, he told me how to fire someone. I said, well, what happened? He said because he was supposed to, it was had to do with koshering the kitchen, and the mashgiach told them, make sure you don't leave here because there was a comment, and the guy left, and he came back, and there was a big fire in the whole, obviously it wasn't a big fire in terms of, like, burning down the hotel, but the point was, he had to fire them anyway because of the hotel, but basically, it's a suffix sakana, like you leave a fire open, a person has no credit. So therefore, it's not because you just fire someone for any little mistake. If a mistake involves a suffix sakana, so the Gemara says, you fire the moel. You can't, it's no longer. So it doesn't say it explicitly, but it seems to be that it's a health issue, mitzitza. And we all know that today medical science claims, but you don't need mitzitza. In other words, why do they claim it? Because there are many Gentile children who are circumcised every day, and there's no mitzitza, and we don't see any danger to those kids. Hence, we see mitzitza is no longer a health issue. So number one, it'll be a different child. I'm not getting into it here now. The Gemara says the Gemara says at least mitzitza b'peh. Gemara says mitzitza is a health issue. What about if they mitzitza b'peh is a danger issue? That's a separate discussion I'm not going into now. But here, let's say the Gemara says it's a health issue and we're saying it's neutral. It's not medical science saying it's neutral. Whatever medical science says it's the opposite. What do you do? So that's a separate discussion. But the point being is, and not only that, but so the Tiferes Yisrael was one of the first to bring it up. He brought, so number one issue is, do we need mitzitza today? If mitzitza doesn't play any, if we assume it doesn't play, the mitzitza claim, the Mefarshim and the Rambam explain, what held role that when you suction out the blood, so it's kind of like it helps with the it prevents blood clotting. It was thought that you put some, you suction out the blood, and today doctors say that's not true. So one answer is, do I need mitzitz at all? If Eretz Yisrael raises that shaila, some people don't like the fact that he raised the shaila, they don't learn his svarim anymore, those during yeshivas. But the Eretz Yisrael, writes that he raises that issue. So we assume today anyway we could raise the issue, but we assume everyone does, any reputable mold does mitzitza today. Whether you do mitzitza b'kli or b'peh, that's a separate discussion. So we assume, and not only that, but we take a stand, we even do mitzitza on Shabbos. When you do a mold does even mitzitza b'kli. The Gemara, medical science says not to, so what's going on here? So what's the difference between mitzitza versus marchit and sakatan, or depending how you learn horei kina wasn't a danger anyway. That was just a halakhic issue. So mitzitza touches on a separate issue. Is mitzitza only a health issue? If it's only a health issue, then you could consider not doing it on Shabbos and not doing it at all. But many assume, some Rishonim might, that no, that's a chayuk in the bris. So if it's a chayuk in the bris, you have to do it. Again, if it was conclusive that mitzitza b'peh was actually I spoke to, have a cousin in, he learns in the Kola in Torah V'das. And I know, I was just speaking to him before Pesach, and Rabbi Belsky, the big posek, he's a mola. I know he was the mola of my nephew, my cousin. So in fact, I was saying, so what is what does Rebelsky say about mitzitza b'peh? With the whole, so he holds you still do mitzitza b'peh. So I said, so I was just discussing. I was just saying, so obviously he holds then it must not be a sakana. In other words, obviously he holds it's not compelled. In other words, it's not enough statistics. I was trying to press my cousin. He wasn't answering. I mean, not that he didn't, because he didn't necessarily, he didn't want to answer for Rebelsky, but I was just pressing him up. But I'm saying, but hypothetically, if whatever evidence you need, I don't know what it takes. So that's part of the shaila. It's 1 in 1,000 or something. Whatever the definition is going to be, then you'll have to be molded. Even if mitzitza is a mitzvah, but if you call it sakana, you don't put yourself. So I guess he had to be molded. So the point being is, even though we have different incidents in mitzitza b'peh, they could show him a mitzvah yadara. It's not conclusive. In fact, as I like mentioning, Rav Avram Yitzchak HaKohen Cook, he was a big mitzitza b'peh guy, and also because he's into Kabbalah. But in general, his shita was like this. He felt that, let's say Chazal tell us something's healthy, or Chazal tell us one thing, medical science tells us another thing. He said the most medical science can do is create a suffix in halacha. He says the nature of medical science is never absolute. It's constantly changing and changing. The best you can do is create a doubt. So if you have a question between Chazal, which he says is supremacy Chazal based on Kabbalah, whatever you want to call it, that Chazal trumps over medical science because medical science isn't absolute. So number one, he believed, again, so he said, and he writes, what do you mean mitzitza b'peh is proven? Well, I don't know if he said, but others say, same as Rav Kook would say it is, the Gemara says it's a suffix sakana. So number one, some have say maybe it means it's a spiritual thing. It's an you'll become an apikaris or something like that. Or others say, what do you mean? But who says it's a suffix sakana for the first 3 months? Have you did a study on anyone who hasn't done a mitzitza b'peh from 1 to 25 or 1 to 50? The point is, it's inconclusive. What does that mean? You can never prove for sure that by, I'm saying, it's impossible to prove anything. But at his sheet, he has an interesting raya. I like what he says here. He says, whether I agree with whether I like what he says about medical science or not, but I like what he says here. I like his raya. He says the Gemara in Yuma, Daf Pei Gimel, the famous Gemara that, let's say, someone's a chola, and he's not sure should he eat or not. So if the doctor tells him no, it's okay, you can eat. I'm telling you, and the person says no, I feel I'm a chol, and I have to eat or I'm going to be getting. So the lach is what? To listen to the patient. Leiv yodei maras nefesh. So the Cook says, well, if medical science is absolute, then what do you mean? If the doctor says you can't eat, you can't eat. Then the fact the doctor, maybe Kitana, the doctors today are different doctors. Then if you want to come up with an answer, but I'm just saying it's interesting, right? But at least Bisman HaGemara, even those doctors, so he claims the most you could do is create a suffix, and therefore he goes, he says definitely mitzitza b'peh, and that was, he's talking a long time ago, in terms of that. So again, the issue is going to be, we're going to find, on the other hand, we find many therapies in the Gemara, which the Gemara even says you're allowed to machal Shabbos for, and and yet today, and yet today, I think the Rash, for the same right, whoever follows these therapies, like you're basically committing suicide, domo, nafsho, domo, something like, Tosis, writes, the Gemara writes, what's the healthiest time to eat fish? Right before it's about to spoil. Let's say it takes 6 days to spoil, eat it 5 days at sunset. Obviously, Tosis says, we eat fresh fish. So then you get into the Shtana HaTeva, so it's different. So basically, the different thing, the Shtana HaTeva is the safe way of saying is, basically you're saying science is right and the rabbis are wrong. Because you're basically saying, okay, it's time, when the rabbi said it was right, but today it's changed. But others want to suggest that the question is, do you have to say that? Can I say Chazal or wrong? And that's the whole Slifkin issue with, I don't know if it's going with Rabbi Black, but the whole thing, why many people came out against Slifkin is, so the truth be told, what he said wasn't so right. I mean, he was just basically quoting, which I didn't even get to tonight yet, the Rav Shir Yagon, the Rabbim, so they basically say the science of that they only had the knowledge of the science of our times. There's nothing against them. They didn't have Einstein, they didn't have Newton. So the question, if I say we're better doctors today than Chazal, so is that a bad? So it all depends what you mean by it. If you mean because I have all this information, they didn't, but if you take it to mean, people, the way it sounds like Chazal didn't know what they're talking about, and therefore if they don't know what they're talking about by the case of whatever, by fish and meat, or the case of mitzitza, then they lose. In fact, that's what some write, that the opposite, that don't follow the Gemara therapies, because then they're going to see they don't work, and people are going to laugh at Chazal. So therefore you get in, it's more the slippery slope theory with Slifkin. It is what it is. I'm sure some of you don't like what he has to say, but I'm saying is, it's not so much what he's saying is, he's just quoting different Rishonim, which are there. And therefore the point being is, that it goes down to, it's like a machlokas, Chazon Ish and Rav Moshe, and others in terms of, let's say, treifa. Everyone agrees treifa by an animal is a halach l'Moshe b'Sinai. Whatever, Kabbalah, that's why it's not changing. But what about a treifa by a human being? So the Chazon Ish says that's a Kabbalah also. And if it was the science at the time during the Gemara, that's it. Even if the changes, like we said, and Rav Moshe writes, no. We have a tradition by a treifa by an animal, by a treifa by a human being, that was based on the science of our times. That's why a pesua daka, that someone will yobo bakao, if you have, let's say, a hole in the testicles, and so basically the person was going to die, you can't do it. Today, for infertility to take tests, fertility tests, that's the way you take a test, is you take a needle, you put it into that area, and you make a hole in there. So Rav Moshe writes, no, that person's not a Petsua. It's the opposite. The reason why they were Petsua Daka then, because you were causing, the person was never going to be able to have kids, they were going to, here's the opposite, you're doing it for the opposite reason, and therefore the Nakudas HaMachokas, as the Chazon Ish learns, all the stuff from the science is based on a tradition. Everything Chazal got from the scientists. Where Moshe is saying no. If the science was based on tradition, that's not changing, like treifa. But a definition by a human being of a treifa, that was only based on the science. Of course, how one knows that is a good question. But but it's more. I'm interested in the principle. And obviously, you have to know the principle, applying it to. So again, so when you go through all the different cases, again, we'll have to stop here. But when you go, it's also you have to know, like, are they fundamental machlokesim, or are they arguing on details, like, are they arguing on spontaneous generation? No, the Chazal didn't think, even from the results, there are different ways of learning. So some will say Nishtana Hateva Chazal were never wrong. The others say no. It's possible. Of Shir Yagon, the Rambam's son writes that when Chazal were basing on the science of their time, so you discard the science, you discard the halacha. Again, so Horei Pina. So if you assume the reason was spontaneous generation, then you throw out the halacha. Unless you come up like Rav Shlomo Zalman with another thing, no. You could be Nishtana Tev, whichever the Rabbi, whichever approach you want to take. So we'll have to stop here. You'll have to continue on other examples in terms. And just to conclude, that there was this professor, I think Jacobson his name is, he teaches at MIT, he's like about Tshuva, and he came to YU visiting, and he met with Rav Schechter, and other people, and some genius, I think he invented the Kindle, he was involved, and basically he started learning Daf Yomi, I think it was a Gemara in Chulin, and he's a lawyer, I guess. He said, when I was in law school, I realized you could write up a document and the law has nothing to say on it. You could find the case, I could write up a contract and there's no, he says, halacha is not that way. You can never find anything in halacha that doesn't exist. In other words, so in fact, like he was saying, so Rav Schechter was talking about a Gemara in Chulin, the Gemara talks about a case where it's half human, half growing from the ground. So everyone says ridiculous, it doesn't exist, like how could you have it in it? So this guy Jacobson saying, it's not so crazy, I might do that one day. So the point being is, and Rav Schechter was giving him more, is that basically Chazal were writing things with doros. There's certain times, why a lot of times you have like crazy principles and crazy cases in the Gemara, because they're just learning different principles, and a lot of times, like people thought mermaids existed, it could be it hasn't happened yet, but who knows down the line? So halacha covers everything, and therefore there has to be there's no such thing as a halacha in contrast to secular law, where if it's a man-made law. That's why the principles are always operable. It's always getting into applying the practicality, and then many other things about I haven't got to the second. I guess we touched on when science collides with Torah, the Jewish law change. A lot of other examples, we'll have to get into at a later date.